The rain came without warning. Lagos mornings were unpredictable, and this one was no different. Ijeoma stood at the bus stop, shielding her head with a faded office file. As puddles formed quickly on the ground, she noticed an older woman walking slowly along the road. Her wrapper was soaked, her slippers worn thin, and her hands trembled as she balanced a plastic bag on her head. It was Mama Ijeoma, the cleaner from the company's maintenance wing. No one ever spoke much to her. She kept to herself, always early, always quiet. But something about seeing her that wet and cold tugged at Ijeoma's chest. Without thinking she waved. "Auntie, come enter." "Let me drop you," Ijeoma called from the kiki she had just entered alone. The woman hesitated. No worry my Pekin. I fit waka." "I insist," Ijeoma said, pulling her in gently. "You're not made of iron, ma." They sat in silence at first, the tuk-tuk humming through flooded streets. The older woman looked away, almost shy. But when Ijeoma handed her a spare nylon bag to cover her soaked feet, she finally smiled. "God bless you, my child," she whispered. Ijeoma simply nodded. She didn't think it was a big deal. Just something any decent person would do. But behind that soft smile, the old woman stared long and hard at Ijeoma. As if memorizing her face. As if testing something only time would reveal. And that was the first ride that would change everything. The company courtyard wasn't much, just a lone mango tree, a cracked bench, and a dusty patch of earth that baked under the afternoon sun. But to Ijeoma, it was peace. That day she carried her usual meal, 2 wraps of muamua and a bottle of sachet water tucked into a plastic bag. As she settled down to eat, she noticed Mama Ijeoma wiping her hands with a faded scarf, sitting on a low stone nearby. Ijeoma hesitated, then waved. "Mama, come and join me here." The old woman blinked in surprise. "Are you sure? I'm already eating now. What's the point of eating alone?" Ijeoma patted the bench beside her. Mama Ijeoma sat slowly, her bones creaking with each movement. Ijeoma unwrapped the extra muamua she had brought. She always carried an extra just in case. Without a word she handed it over. They ate quietly, the wind rustling mango leaves above them. "You always eat here?" Mama asked softly. "Yes. The break room smells like chemicals," Ijeoma said, chuckling. Mama Ijeoma nodded, then looked at her. "Not many people greet me, talk less of eating with me." Ijeoma shrugged. "We all day try survive. Today it's me helping. Tomorrow who knows?" The words landed heavier than she intended. Mama Ijeoma's eyes filled with something unreadable, maybe gratitude, maybe pain. But she said nothing else. They finished their lunch side by side, 2 different worlds sharing a bench under a tree. Neither knew it yet, but this simple meal was being remembered, and recorded, in a heart that had watched many, but rarely found one so true. And that's when Mama Ijeoma began writing a mental list, with Ijeoma's name at the top. The office was buzzing with gossip, as always. By the time Ijeoma returned from lunch, 2 of her colleagues were already whispering near the printer. One of them, Chinello, glanced up and rolled her eyes. "Ijeoma the humanitarian is back," she muttered loudly enough to be heard. The other girl giggled. "Hope she gave her poor cleaner friend dessert today." Ijeoma ignored them and walked to her desk, pretending not to hear. But the words stung more than she'd admit. That week, the office had started noticing her friendship with Mama Ijeoma. Some smiled politely. Others smirked or avoided her altogether. A few even stopped inviting her to lunch. "She's too familiar with the lower staff," someone had told the HR supervisor during a team meeting. "It makes our department look unserious." Ijeoma overheard but said nothing. She wasn't trying to make a point. She was just being kind. That's all. To her, Mama Ijeoma was simply someone who deserved respect. Wrinkles didn't make a person invisible. Later that day, while washing her mug in the kitchenette, Mama Ijeoma appeared behind her and whispered, "I see the way they look at you because of me." Ijeoma smiled faintly. They looked at Jesus too, didn't they? For a second, the old woman's eyes welled up. Then she said something strange. "One day, child, they'll wish they had sat with us under that mango tree." Ijeoma laughed, thinking it was just an old woman's riddle. But Mama Ijeoma wasn't joking. She was remembering everything. And she had started testing hearts in silence. It was almost closing time when Ijeoma noticed her bag was unzipped. She froze. Her purse, where she kept her transport fare, ID card, and her late mother's pendant, was gone. She turned the bag inside out. Nothing. She ran to her desk. Nothing. Heart pounding, she retraced her steps. The restroom, the kitchen, the courtyard. Still nothing. By the time she sat on the bench under the mango tree, The office lights were going out one by one. She felt tears pressing behind her eyes. Not because of the money, but the pendant. The last thing her mother ever gave her. Looking for something? A voice croaked. Mama Uduak stepped from the shadows, holding a small black purse in her hand. Ijeoma gasped. Where did you? I found it under your bench. I would have brought it earlier, but I wanted to be sure it was yours. Ijeoma grabbed it and opened it quickly. Everything was inside. Except, the zipper was fixed. It hadn't worked in months. She looked up in confusion. You fixed it? She asked. Mama Uduak just smiled. One old woman's hobby. I used to mend clothes, zippers, even people's hearts. She turned to walk away before Ijeoma could say anything else. But something about the way she walked, calm, sure-footed, almost noble, sent a shiver down Ijeoma's spine. That night, Ijeoma clutched her purse to her chest like a second heartbeat. She didn't know it yet, but the hands that stitched her zipper had once signed million-dollar deals. And the woman everyone ignored was quietly rewriting Ijeoma's fate. A colorful flyer was pinned to the office notice board that morning. Internal promotions open. Apply now. The bold letters were followed by job listings for supervisor roles, assistant managers, and, most exciting, operations coordinator. Whispers filled the building. People rushed to polish their CVs. Some printed certificates. Others lobbied quietly, dropping compliments around their department heads. The atmosphere shifted from casual to competitive in hours. But Ijeoma? She just read the flyer and walked away. She didn't think she stood a chance. She was junior staff. No connections. No degree from abroad. Just a local university graduate with a good heart and an average salary. Chinello of course noticed. You're not applying? She asked loud enough for nearby ears. Oh wait, you're probably hoping the cleaners vote you in. Laughter echoed from a few desks. Ijeoma gave a tight smile. I'll leave it to those who think they deserve it. As she turned away she bumped into someone by the door. Mama Uduak. The old woman looked at her thoughtfully as if she had heard everything. Sometimes, Mama said gently, it's not about who applies. It's about who's already been seen. Ijeoma frowned. Seen by who? But Mama Uduak just walked away humming an old hymn. Later that evening, while packing her files, Ijeoma glanced at the flyer one more time. And for the first time she felt something stir, not ambition but curiosity. What if kindness was enough? And in a nearby office, someone was already preparing a very different list. One Ijeoma didn't know she was topping. The sun had barely risen when Ijeoma's small car pulled up in front of the same bus stop. As usual, Mama Uduak stood there with her bag, wrapped in her favorite brown scarf. Morning, Mama, Ijeoma smiled, unlocking the door from inside. Bless you, my child, Mama said, sliding into the passenger seat with ease. The drive began in their usual silence. Just the hum of the engine and the chirp of morning birds along the roadside. But today felt different. At a red light, the silence broke. Did you see the promotion notice? Ijeoma asked almost shyly. Yes, Mama replied. You think someone like me has a chance? Mama turned to her slowly. And why not? You're smart, responsible, kind. Ijeoma chuckled. Well, those things don't show on paper. Mama smiled faintly. Some of the best decisions I ever made weren't based on paper. That sentence lingered. Ijeoma raised an eyebrow. You mean, in your past work? Mama paused, then replied in perfect, fluent English. When I was in procurement, I oversaw vendor evaluations across multiple subsidiaries. Credentials rarely revealed character. Ijeoma's hands froze on the wheel. She looked at Mama Uduak with wide eyes. The old woman quickly cleared her throat. I mean, when I used to help choose market suppliers, she added in her usual broken pidgin. But the moment had already passed. Ijeoma's brain started connecting dots. The repaired purse, the respectful way cleaners spoke to her, her quiet confidence. She didn't press further. But as she dropped Mama off and watched her disappear into the staff entrance, one thought echoed in her mind. Who are you really? And for the first time, Ijeoma realized her morning rides were no longer ordinary. It was a Saturday morning when Mama Uduak knocked on Ijeoma's door. She never came uninvited, but this time she looked a little nervous. Please, my daughter, can you drive me to my village? She asked gently. I have something important to check on. Ijeoma didn't hesitate. Of course, Mama. Let me grab my keys. The drive took over an hour. They left behind the chaos of Lagos and entered quieter roads surrounded by palm trees and red earth. But when they arrived at the village, Ijeoma blinked. This was no ordinary rural home. The compound was large, fenced with high walls, and painted in soft cream with marbled steps leading to the entrance. Neatly dressed security men stood by the gate. A quiet driver was washing a black SUV beside a detached bungalow. "Mama, is this where you live?" Ijeoma asked, stunned. Mama Aduak gave a small smile. "I grew up here. It's been in my family for a while." They walked into the compound, where a younger woman quickly bowed to greet Mama. "Welcome, madam," she said respectfully. "Mama, who are you?" Ijeoma asked, half laughing but fully confused. Mama simply pointed to the mango tree at the back of the house. "Sit and wait for me there. I'll be back soon." Ijeoma sat under the tree, heart pounding. Nothing made sense anymore. And as she watched the guards nod respectfully at Mama, she whispered to herself, "What kind of cleaner lives like this?" In that quiet village, questions began forming faster than answers. And the truth was no longer hiding. It was getting ready to reveal itself, bit by bit. Monday came, and with it, a new tension in the office air. Rumors were flying. People whispered about secret interviews and board meetings. Some claimed the CEO had already chosen the next manager, while others said an outsider would be brought in. Ijeoma kept her head down, but her mind wasn't at rest. She hadn't spoken about the village visit to anyone. She couldn't even explain it to herself. How could a cleaner live in a mansion, have a driver, and be addressed as Madam by uniformed staff? It made no sense. That morning, while getting water from the dispenser, she overheard two cleaners talking softly. "Madam, no day greet anyhow, oh," one of them said. "Not true," the other nodded. "But that girl, what'n't be her name? Ijeoma? She day always follow him talk normal." Ijeoma turned slightly, pretending not to listen. "She's been watching all of us for months," the first cleaner added. "You think say na ordinary cleaning she day do?" That was all Ijeoma needed to hear. She walked back to her desk, heart racing. There was no more denying it. Mama Aduak wasn't just a cleaner. She was someone important. But why was she pretending? And why did she choose Ijeoma to talk to, eat with, ride with? The questions piled up like unopened files on her table. And while the rest of the office scrambled for power and attention, Ijeoma sat quietly, unaware that her name was already being discussed in a room she hadn't entered yet. By midweek, the office buzz reached a boiling point. Everyone knew something big was coming. Then, at exactly 11 a.m., the CEO's assistant sent out a company-wide memo. All staff are to report to the main conference room by noon. Important announcement regarding internal promotions and organizational restructuring. Chairs scraped floors. Phones buzzed. The HR department scrambled to prepare attendance sheets. Ijeoma's hands shook slightly as she printed her department's file. She wasn't expecting much, but her heart thumped anyway. When everyone gathered, the CEO stood at the front, flanked by two unfamiliar men and one empty chair. He adjusted the mic. "Thank you all for coming. Over the past few months, we've been quietly observing this organization, not just in terms of performance but character. And starting today, we're making some changes." Whispers rippled through the room. He continued, "This company was built not just by qualifications but by values. That's why we brought in a silent partner, someone who's been among you working quietly watching." Heads turned. A woman who believes in humility and heart over paperwork. Ijeoma sat up straight. Her palms grew clammy. The CEO smiled slightly. "You may not know her face, but many of you have seen her every day." Then he looked toward the door. And in walked Mama Aduak. But not as a cleaner. She wore a deep blue wrapper laced with gold thread, a matching head tie and low heels. Her posture was straight. Her gaze calm. And the room fell completely silent. Ijeoma stared, breath caught in her throat. Because this was no longer the woman who asked for rides. This was someone powerful, coming to shift the ground beneath them all. The day after the announcement, Mama Aduak didn't show up. Not in the cleaning wing. Not in the hallway. Not in the courtyard under the mango tree. It was as if she had vanished. Ijeoma searched the break room, hoping for a sign. Maybe she was just resting, maybe she had returned to her village. But her usual water bottle was gone. Her yellow gloves no longer hung by the sink. Even the cleaners looked uneasy. "She no tell Una say she day go?" one of them asked Ijeoma. "No," she replied. "Nothing at all." That afternoon, she mustered the courage to ask the HR supervisor about the sudden promotion announcement. The woman simply smiled and said, "The board will inform staff in due time." Confused and restless, Ijeoma decided to visit the address Mama had once scribbled on a slip of paper for emergencies. She took a bike and rode through a narrow street that ended near a row of modest apartments. She knocked on the door gently. An old man answered. Yes? Can I help you? I'm looking for Mama Aduak. She used to live here. The man frowned. There's no one like that here. Never has been. Ijeoma blinked. Are you sure? Older woman, quiet voice, always wears a scarf. No madam like that here, he said, closing the door gently. She stood there stunned. What was going on? Was the name fake? Was the house just a front? The woman she thought she knew was suddenly a ghost. And in her place was a mystery that only raised more questions. Ijeoma felt something big was coming. But she had no idea just how close it already was. The next morning, the silence around Mama Aduak's disappearance became heavier. Even the cleaners had stopped asking. The office halls felt colder, more watchful. Something had shifted. Ijeoma couldn't let it go. She walked up to Uche, one of the building's security guards, a soft-spoken man who often greeted her with a nod and half a smile. Uche, please, do you remember the cleaner who used to sit under the mango tree? She asked quietly. He scratched his head. You mean that quiet mama? Yes. He glanced around, then leaned closer. She no be ordinary oh. One day last week I saw her enter one big black SUV, plate number covered. Two men opened door for am like madam. Ijeoma's eyes widened. You're sure? I day there. I even greet her. She smile and tell me, God bless you for always standing. Then she enter that car and go. Ijeoma took a deep breath. There was no denying it anymore. Mama Aduak wasn't just undercover. She was someone important. Someone protected. Can I see the security footage? She asked. Uche hesitated. You go get me into trouble. Just a few seconds, she pleaded. That night, when most workers had gone, Uche played the clip. There she was, Mama Aduak in a navy blue dress, stepping into a black SUV like royalty, flanked by two suited men. No broom. No apron. No scarf. Ijeoma stared at the screen stunned. All this time she thought she was helping a cleaner. But it turned out. A queen had been walking quietly beside her all along. It was Thursday afternoon when Ijeoma was called to deliver files to the top floor, the executive wing. She had never been beyond the glass double doors before. Only senior managers went up there. Her hands trembled slightly as she held the brown envelope with the HR restructuring documents inside. The receptionist gave her a stiff nod and led her to the boardroom. Leave it on the table, the woman said, barely making eye contact. Ijeoma stepped inside. It was a room of polished marble, soft leather chairs, and a massive table that could seat 20 people. Large windows spilled sunlight over the wooden floor. A faint scent of jasmine filled the air. And sitting near the head of the table was a woman dressed in a cream blouse, gold earrings, and a posture that commanded silence. Ijeoma froze. It was her. Mama Aduak. But there was no scarf. No rubber slippers. No cleaning gloves. Only poise. Only power. Only presence. Ijeoma blinked, confused. Before she could say a word, the woman gave her a soft, knowing smile, but didn't speak. She simply nodded toward the table. Ijeoma placed the file down with trembling fingers. Then turned and walked out quietly. As the door closed behind her, her mind spun. She had given this woman rides, shared food, protected her from gossip, and never once asked for anything in return. And now that same woman sat at the top, silently watching everything, and everyone. The truth wasn't just close anymore. It was sitting at the boardroom table. Ijeoma didn't sleep that night. Her thoughts raced like Lagos traffic in a rainstorm. Every conversation, every ride, every quiet moment under the mango tree played again in her mind, but now each scene looked different. She had never asked who Mama Aduak really was. She had just assumed. But now she knew. Or at least she was beginning to. The next morning, the company gathered again in the conference hall. It was time to officially unveil the chosen candidates for promotion. Chinello and the others whispered excitedly. I heard it's between Kelvin from logistics and Shade from marketing, someone said. Ijeoma sat silently in the third row, her hands in her lap. Then the CEO walked in, with Mama Aduak beside him. Only, no one called her that anymore. He cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, meet our silent investor and founding board member, Mrs. Udoka Williams. A gasp filled the room. Some people stood. Others just stared. Ijeoma's heart stopped. She couldn't breathe. The woman who had once accepted moi with wrinkled fingers now stood tall in a cream blazer, her voice firm and graceful. I've been with this company since its beginning, Udoka said. And for the past 6 months I've been here in plain sight, observing, listening, remembering. She paused. In a world that chases resumes, I chased something else, character. Her eyes scanned the room. And when they met Ijeoma's, they paused. For one long, quiet second, everything stood still. And Ijeoma knew. This was no coincidence. The room had never been this silent. Mrs. Udoka Williams stood tall at the front, hands folded, eyes calm. The woman once called Mama Iduak no longer needed a disguise. She spoke slowly, clearly, and with power that didn't shout, but made everyone listen. Many years ago I helped co-found this company. But I chose to remain in the shadows, investing quietly while watching how we treat people, not just clients but each other. A murmur ran through the crowd. 3 months ago I returned, not with bodyguards or cameras but with a broom and a scarf. I became a cleaner. I swept your halls. I watched how people spoke when they thought no one important was listening. Some employees sank lower in their chairs. I saw arrogance. I saw gossip. I saw pride in places where there should have been compassion. Then her voice softened. But I also saw light. She looked toward Ijeoma. I saw someone who treated a cleaner like a queen, who shared food without pride, who gave rides in the rain without asking for anything in return. Ijeoma, you reminded me why we built this company. Ijeoma's eyes widened. Her hands trembled in her lap. Was she hearing correctly? Mrs. Udoka stepped forward. This next chapter requires more than skill, it needs heart. And Ijeoma, your kindness and silence spoke louder than every resume I've ever read. The room erupted. Some clapped. Others whispered in disbelief. But Ijeoma just sat frozen, tears in her eyes, heart racing. Because in that moment, everything she had done without thinking had just changed her entire life. After the announcement, the conference room slowly emptied, but Ijeoma stayed frozen in her seat, staring at the stage where Mrs. Udoka stood moments ago. She had expected nothing. Yet now, her name was being whispered across departments, printed in emails and written in rooms she had never dared to enter. Later that day, a special executive memo was sent to every department. It was titled, Internal Audit of Character-Based Performance, Shortlisted Staff. Attached was a list. Only a few names appeared. Most were senior staff, heads of departments, and one unexpected junior assistant. Ijeoma Okafor, HR support. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Some congratulated her with forced smiles. Others stared as she walked by, their eyes full of questions. Her? Someone scoffed quietly near the copy machine. She didn't even apply. She didn't have to, another muttered. She was chosen. Meanwhile, Ijeoma walked quietly into the courtyard where she and Mama, no Mrs. Udoka, used to eat. The bench was empty. But something lay on the seat. A folded piece of paper. She opened it. In careful handwriting were 3 short lines. Some people chase titles. You chased humanity. That's why I chose you. No name. No signature. But she didn't need one. Tears rolled down her cheeks. Because now she understood. The lunch under the tree, the rides, the repaired purse. They were never forgotten. They were recorded. And now they had rewritten her future. The next morning the office was unusually quiet. No teasing. No side comments. Just stiff smiles and hushed conversations. A second memo hit inboxes. Official promotions, effective immediately. Ijeoma Okafor, promoted to Assistant Operations Coordinator. The words hit like thunder. Chinelo dropped her phone. That must be a mistake, she whispered. Others checked their emails twice, hoping they missed something. But the list was clear. Her name was there, at the top. In the HR department, a few clapped politely. Others barely looked up. But Ijeoma? She sat still, hands clasped, unable to stop the tears forming behind her eyes. It wasn't just the promotion. It was the fact that kindness, not competition, had brought her here. Later that afternoon, she was called into the executive lounge. A soft, golden room with velvet seats and high windows. Mrs. Udoka waited inside. She stood and opened her arms. Without a word, Ijeoma walked in and hugged her tightly. You've earned this, my daughter, Udoka whispered. I didn't even try, Ijeoma replied, overwhelmed. Udoka smiled. That's exactly why you were the right choice. You were kind when no one was watching. And in this company, we need hearts like yours at the top. Ijeoma nodded, speechless. For the first time, she wasn't the girl sitting quietly under the tree. She was now a voice in the room, a light in the building, and a lesson to everyone who once overlooked her. And her journey was just beginning. The office felt like a different world now. Gone were the long hours of quiet paperwork under fluorescent lights. Ijeoma now had her own desk on the second floor, near windows that bathed the room in morning light. Her nameplate read, Ijeoma Okafor, Assistant Operations Coordinator. Some congratulated her with smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Others ignored her altogether. But she didn't care. She was focused, grateful, ready to learn. Mrs. Udoka had assigned her a mentor and instructed senior staff to cooperate fully. But not everyone was pleased. At lunch, Chinello stormed into the break room, voice sharp. Let me guess, you're eating with cleaners today too? Ijeoma looked up calmly. I always ate where I felt peace. That hasn't changed. Chinello scoffed. You think kindness is enough to run a company? Let's see how long that lasts. Her voice echoed down the hallway as she left. That night, Ijeoma stayed late reviewing logistics files. She didn't know every detail yet, but she was determined to grow into the role she'd been given. When she finally walked out to her car, she saw a note tucked beneath her wiper. She opened it. True promotion isn't a position. It's becoming more of who you truly are. Keep shining. No name. Just familiar handwriting. She looked up toward the top floor window, and for a second she thought she saw Udoka's silhouette watching from behind the curtain. Maybe it was her. Maybe not. But one thing was clear. The woman she once gave a ride to was still guiding her, even from above. Chinello's anger didn't fade, it deepened. She watched Ijeoma's rise like a hawk, bitter that someone once mocked for mingling with cleaners, now had an office, a team, and the attention of the board. But Chinello wasn't the type to lose quietly. One morning she slipped into the HR records room. With careful fingers she searched Ijeoma's file. Her eyes lit up when she found a small detail, a 1-week absence last year with no attached doctor's report. She made copies. Then during a staff meeting, Chinello stood up unexpectedly. Excuse me, she said sweetly, eyes on the issue. I'd like to raise a concern about staff ethics. Some people are enjoying promotions but their files have gaps. For example, an unverified absence. All eyes turned to Ijeoma. Ijeoma sat still, heart pounding. She hadn't even remembered that week. Her mother had fallen ill, and she had rushed home without formal leave. It wasn't meant to be secret, it was just life. Before anyone could speak, a calm voice cut through the room. I approve that absence, said Mrs. Udoka, entering the room with quiet authority. Chinello's mouth parted in shock. Yes, Udoka continued. I was cleaning the floor outside her desk when she got the call. She didn't brag. She didn't beg. She simply packed and went to care for someone she loved. That is leadership. The room fell into stunned silence. Chinello slumped in her seat. Ijeoma turned, face warm with tears, not out of shame, but out of awe. Because once again the kindness she gave without planning had defended her when she least expected it. The executive lounge was quiet that afternoon. Golden light spilled through the windows. Velvet chairs lined the glass walls, and the aroma of freshly baked plantain and fish stew filled the air. Ijeoma sat at a round table, her ID card glinting in the sunlight, hands still slightly nervous despite all that had happened. Then came the soft click of heels. Mrs. Udoka entered, wearing a soft purple wrapper and a matching ghillie. No more scarf. No apron. Just grace. Mind if I join you? She asked. Ijeoma stood quickly. Of course, ma. No ma today, Udoka smiled. Just call me Udoka. They both laughed and just like that, the tension dissolved. As they ate they spoke like old friends. They laughed about the time Ijeoma tried to hide a cracked heel with office tape. They remembered the mango tree and the shared mwamwa. But in the middle of it all, Udoka leaned in and asked, Do you know why I never revealed myself to anyone else? Ijeoma shook her head. Because most people only see faces. You saw my soul. Ijeoma blinked back tears. I thought I was giving you rides, she whispered. Udoka smiled. But you were driving your own future. Outside the lounge, staff passed by, peeking in, whispering, wondering how the girl who once shared lunch with a cleaner now dined at the top table. But inside that room there was no confusion. Just two women bound not by status, but by simple human kindness. And for Ijeoma, the journey had come full circle. A full month had passed since the promotions. The office looked the same on the outside, but inside something had shifted. The walls held more respect. The lunchroom held softer laughter. People watched how they spoke to the janitors now. They greeted the cleaners. They noticed. And at the heart of that quiet transformation was Ijeoma. She no longer walked with her head down. She spoke during meetings. She made suggestions. She listened to junior staff. And every time she passed the mango tree in the courtyard she smiled, because that was where it all began. One Friday afternoon during a quarterly town hall, the CEO stood at the front. This company has always been about more than numbers. And now, thanks to Mrs. Udoka Williams and leaders like Ijeoma Okafor, we are remembering who we are. Applause filled the room. Udoka, seated at the front, nodded proudly. After the meeting, Ijeoma walked to her office. Her new assistant followed with files. She paused, then turned back toward the hallway. "Hold on," she said. She walked downstairs, to the ground floor. Outside, a cleaner struggled to carry 2 buckets. No one helped. Until Ijeoma took one from her hand and smiled. "Let me help." The woman looked stunned. "But Ma, your management." Ijeoma shook her head gently. "I'm human. That comes first." Upstairs, from the top window, Udoka watched silently, smiling. Because she hadn't just found a good worker. She had planted a seed. And now, kindness was growing through the very walls of the company. All because one woman gave a stranger a ride in the rain, and never stopped seeing her as worthy. I hope you enjoyed the story. Please take a moment to like the video, drop a comment, share it with someone, and most importantly don't forget to subscribe to this channel for more powerful stories like this. Your support means everything. Thank you for watching this video.